Football is obsessed with wonder kids, but sometimes the best players start slow. As a teenager, Raphinha was almost released from youth football. At 22, he was a nobody playing in the French League, but by the age of 27, he became quite literally the best football player in the world. This is the story of a poor reject from the Brazilian favelas who completely took over world football. This is the full story of Raphinha.
Leaves it. It's Raphinha!
To understand how we got here, we have to start from the very beginning, because growing up in the Restinga favela of Porto Alegre, Rafael Dias-Baioli had the odds stacked against him. This was a place where life was tough, and his home was so small that his whole family slept in one room, even the cats and dogs, and kids could only dream of being a footballer as they played on the streets. But Raphinha, as he is now known, dreamt more than most, as his dad was a drummer in a local band, and that band had one very famous fan, the Brazilian superstar Ronaldinho, who would bring the band to Spain to play for him, and Raphinha's dad would tell him stories from Ronaldinho's time at Barcelona, and Raphinha even once went to Ronaldinho's birthday party, and his stories of footballing glory would make Raphinha dream one day of playing for Barca. These stories would sustain him through the tough times, as he and his friends would wear the Barcelona shirts gifted to them by Ronaldinho, and imagine that the rough streets of Restinga were the Camp Nou, and that their kickabouts were the Champions League final. And he said when living in a place like Restinga, you learn that you can't live on your own, sharing what little food you had or borrowing money so that you could travel to games, and even begging for food when the situation got too tough. It's hard to escape from the favelas, where some of his friends ended up dead or in drug gangs, but one route out is to join a football academy and earn enough money to help out your family. So Raphinha tried every academy he could and had 1 week trials at Internacional, Grêmio, and a host of other teams, but all of them rejected him, saying he was too small, too frail, he's got no power. And so instead of learning his trade at a top academy, Raphinha spent his teenage years playing in Brazil's Várzea tournaments, or as Raphinha calls them, the home of the rejects like me. And these games were rough. They were like the Wild West, with games played on clay in the burning heat, with no goal nets, and one team having to play shirtless. But the players at these tournaments had nothing else, so they gave everything, and things often got out of hand, as Raphinha and his team even faced death threats from the opposing teams. And if a striker was about to score, someone would try to distract them by shooting an actual gun. Raphinha said those games made him tough, so much that he learned to love the pressure and actually wants opposing fans to boo him. But finally, all those scraps and battles on Porto Alegre's dirt pitches paid off, and he got the chance to train with the under-20s at Avaí, a small club based 6 hours away in Florianopolis. But spending so much time away from his friends, his family, his home was tough, as he did everything he could to earn a contract at the club. But before he could earn that scrap of security, Raphinha got injured and then couldn't get back into the squad and was even forced to train alone. These were dark days, and he even thought of giving up, but his mom, who had to hustle her whole life before getting a job she loved, reminded Raphinha of the importance of never giving up on your dream, no matter how tough it gets. She convinced him that he would eventually play football somewhere, and that every tough moment eventually passes. Eventually, he impressed his coaches with one of his one-on-one skills and his finishing, and he got his big chance at the Copa Sao Paulo Youth Tournament, Brazil's most prestigious and most scouted youth tournament. It was here where he first made a name for himself as the star of the tournament, catching the eye of former Barcelona legend Deco, who saw Raphinha's raw talent and signed him up to his agency. And so without even playing a single first-team game for Avaí, Raphinha was on a plane to Europe. Avaí picked up a much-needed six-figure sum from Portuguese side Vitória for Raphinha, but as he hadn't even played a single game for the club, Europe was still a big step for him, so Raphinha joined Vitória's B team. He was raw, a clear talent with technical ability, but whose life of street football meant he still had much to learn when it came to tactics. Vitória could see his potential and worked on his flaws and his discipline, and after 6 months in the B team, Raphinha finally made his first-team debut. It didn't take long for him to start impressing, training hard and winning matches by himself, and in his second season at Vitória, he scored 18 league goals, including this absolute GOAT goal against Feirense, and was named Breakthrough Player of the Year. That was enough for other clubs to take notice, including Sporting Clube de Portugal, and while he was at Sporting, he built up a friendship with Bruno Fernandes, becoming so close to the now Manchester United star that he saw Fernandes as a big brother and as an inspiration that helped push him on to the next level. but he had a slow start at Sporting and suffered an injury midway through the 18-19 season and couldn't match the previous season's goal-scoring heights, only scoring 7 in all competitions, including this classic cutback against Portimonense. But he did get to lift his first trophies as Sporting won the Portuguese Cup double of the Taça de Portugal and the Taça de Liga, and his performances had attracted the interest of French side Rennes, who decided to break their transfer record to sign Raphinha for 21 million euros in a transfer that some of Rennes' players thought was impossible. But Sporting were in desperate need of money, and Raphinha is ambitious, and he said he was convinced by Rennes' ambition, and that huge transfer fee seemed like money well spent, as his performances drove Rennes up the league, as his ability with both feet meant he could pop up all over the pitch to cause defenses problems, and by March, Rennes were third in the Ligue 1 when the season ended abruptly due to the coronavirus outbreak. So, the club qualified for the Champions League, where Raphinha would shine and even set records later in his career. But at this point, he wanted to test himself in the Premier League, and Bruno Fernandes advised him that his style would suit England. One team was particularly interested, as Leeds United's director of football and head coach had both been watching him closely, and when they found out they were both interested, they pulled out all the stops to bring Raphinha to Elland Road. But Rennes wouldn't budge, as their Champions League qualification meant they decided to put Raphinha off limits to all other clubs. Raphinha made it clear that he wanted to play in the Premier League, and so, reluctantly, Rennes agreed, saying it's not good to keep players against their will. So on transfer deadline day, Raphinha moved for £17 million plus add-ons from France to Leeds United. And moving to Leeds meant Raphinha would be working with the legendary manager Marcelo Bielsa, who even surprised Raphinha on his first day of training. But Raphinha said Bielsa spent a lot of time working on Raphinha's positioning and tactics, and whoever Leeds played, they would always play for the win. But Bielsa would also ease Raphinha into the team, and it took until November before he played his first full 90 minutes in the Premier League in a goalless draw against Arsenal. In his next game against Everton, Raphinha scored a 25-yard strike that fizzed past the goalkeeper to win Leeds the game 1-0. Leeds that season were high-scoring, swashbuckling entertainers, as Bielsa's pressing tactics took the Premier League by storm, winning 5-2 one week, then losing 6-2 the next. Raphinha hit some golden form in January, knocking in 3 goals and getting 3 assists in 7 games, including a goal and an assist against Newcastle United. But family and friends mean everything to Raphinha, and he classed Ronaldinho as a friend. So when Ronaldinho's mother died, he dedicated his free kick goal against Southampton to her, saying that you always look out for your brothers. But against Manchester City, Raphinha was on the wrong end of a tough tackle. At first, he thought nothing of it. After all, he grew up playing the Varzea death matches, but when he got home and removed the bandage, his leg had completely swollen up and his blood pressure had plummeted. He couldn't walk and needed surgery to remove all the excess blood. At one point, Raphinha was worried he might lose his leg, and he had to go to the hospital 4 more times to drain more blood, but he managed to recover in time for the final match of the season, where fans were finally back at Elland Road. And by that point, the national team had taken interest in him, but not the Brazilian national team, as through his father, Raphinha qualified for the Italy national team. And ahead of Euro 2020, Roberto Mancini tried to steal him away from Brazil and even asked Jorginho to try to persuade him. Raphinha even applied for an Italian passport, but it didn't arrive in time, so he didn't join up with Italy for the tournament. Later that summer, Raphinha finally got a call-up for the Brazilian national team and made his full debut in October 2021. And what a debut it was, as he won a penalty and got 2 assists, with Brazil beating Venezuela 3-1. A few days later, he scored twice in a 4-1 win against Uruguay. And in the 21-22 season, Raphinha was really going to find his shooting boots, as he netted his first goal in the second game of the season against Everton and added 2 more in September. But Leeds were struggling in the league, and despite finishing 9th the season before, they were now in a relegation battle. So, even though Raphinha scored 5 goals and got 1 assist in an 8-game run before Christmas, he couldn't do anything about Leeds' leaky defense, as the Bielsa ball tactics that had stormed the Premier League the previous season had been worked out by most clubs. Leeds' gung-ho tactics exposed a frail backline, and in February and March, Leeds conceded at least 3 goals in 6 games of a 7-game run, and during the worst of that run, Bielsa was sacked and Jesse Marsch was brought in to try to save Leeds' season. But 3 defeats on the trot put Leeds in the relegation zone, and on the last day of the season, they needed to better Burnley's result to stay in the Premier League. In the 56th minute against Brentford, Raphinha won a penalty which he took himself with the entire weight of the club on his shoulders. And he scored to give Leeds the lead, and in the end, they would win 2-1 and survive in the Premier League another season. That summer, with Raphinha the club's top goal scorer with 11 goals, every club was after him, and it looked as though he would move to Chelsea as they bid £55 million for him. But Raphinha's dream was to move to Barcelona, the club of Ronaldinho, whose kits he wore on those dirt pitches as a kid. But Barcelona's financial issues meant it was difficult for them to find the money for him. But the Catalan giants pulled some levers behind the scenes and somehow found the cash. So, on July 15, 2022, Raphinha joined Barcelona. But when he joined, there was no guarantee he could even play. His shirt lacked a back number, as Barcelona were unsure if they could even register him. But Raphinha wanted to play for Barcelona so badly that he took the risk, even without a guarantee that he could play for the club. But Barcelona sold off certain TV rights and other parts of their business to give themselves some financial headspace, so Raphinha made his debut in the opening game of the season against Rayo Vallecano in a game that finished goalless, and, like his debut, he had a slow start at Barcelona, often starting on the bench or being substituted off, and though he got his first goal for the club with a header against Sevilla in his fourth game, it would take him until November before he found the back of the net again. Some fans were questioning whether he was justifying his huge price tag given the players that Barcelona had to let go to get their accounts in order, and Raphinha had been signed to compete with the struggling Ousmane Dembele. But now that Dembele had found some great form, Raphinha was getting fewer opportunities until Dembele got injured in the second half of the season. So, in that first season, Barcelona won La Liga, and Raphinha got a first major trophy there, but only contributed 7 goals and 7 assists in the league. And so after being at Camp Nou for only a year, it looked like he might leave, as Barcelona needed to balance their books and they could only afford one out of Dembele and Raphinha. But in the end, it was Dembele who was sold to Paris Saint-Germain, but Raphinha faced a new threat to his place in the team, and that threat came from teenage prodigy Lamine Yamal. Raphinha got off to a dreadful start to the 23-24 season as he got a red card in the first game, and then, a few games later, he picked up a muscle injury, and while he was absent, Yamal took his chance. So for the first half of the season, Raphinha continued to struggle, and though he seemed to regain his form at the end of December with assists in 4 straight games, another injury meant he spent most of January on the sidelines. But rather than worry about Yamal, Raphinha supported his young teammate, and after a standout performance against Getafe, when Raphinha scored and got an assist, he said being able to compete with Yamal is an honor and that it would make them both better. With the fans and media on Raphinha's back, even head coach Xavi had to speak out and say how much Barcelona valued him. Raphinha repaid that trust in the Champions League when he got 2 key assists in the round of 16 against Napoli, and then scored 3 goals over the 2 legs of the quarterfinal against PSG, and had a more productive April when he was getting a goal or assist almost every game to end the season on a high. But Barcelona as a whole were lacking something and finished second in La Liga for a trophyless season. Head coach Xavi was sacked, and around that same time, Saudi Pro League side Al Hilal placed a €90 million bid in for Raphinha. It looked like he might be heading to the Middle East, but new head coach Hansi Flick looked at Raphinha and knew he was capable of taking Barcelona to the next level. So, not only did he reject Al Hilal's offer, he also made Raphinha one of the captains of the team. And Flick saw Raphinha as central to his plans, literally, as he sometimes played him in the middle of the attacking trio as a second striker, as well as sometimes on the left wing and sometimes on the right, as the simple and obvious choice between Raphinha and Yamal is to just play them both, allowing Raphinha to come in more centrally to create space and use his pace and movement to stretch defenses. So Barcelona often set up in 24-25 with Raphinha on the left and Yamal on the right, and Raphinha repaid the faith shown in him instantly, with 3 assists in the opening 4 games and then a spectacular hat-trick against Real Valladolid in the 4th La Liga match of the season. After a brace against Villarreal a few games later, Raphinha was awarded by being named the captain for the first time in a match against Getafe in September. Raphinha showed that if you believe in him, he'll come up with the goods, as he set his best ever purple patch of his career in October and November with 5 assists and 6 goals in the space of 8 La Liga games, including a brace of goals against Mallorca, all while wearing the captain's armband. In the Champions League, he was on fire too, scoring a hat-trick against Bayern Munich as he notched up 8 goals in the group stage alone, and in January, Raphinha would travel to Saudi Arabia as Barcelona played in the Supercopa, where he scored 2 goals and got an assist against Real Madrid to win Barcelona's first trophy of the season.